Welcome to the show No Instructions, where we meet with founders and interview them about starting and growing their businesses. I'm your host, Chad Ingram, three-time founder and CEO at Distro. Distro is a platform to help businesses build teams by breaking down borders around the world. Let's go ahead and get started with today's guest and see how they built their business. Welcome to the podcast today. I've got with us Ben Lopez from Mercato Partners, or Venture Partners, right? Yeah. Welcome. Thanks for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, cool. A friend of ours, a mutual friend of ours, who's also a guest on the podcast, suggested that we have you on and talked about how you have a pretty cool and interesting story, really similar to her, which was Christy Muir. So we want to dive into that today. And where does your story start?
Well, I can take you back to the very beginning. So I, grew up in Guatemala, lived there for about 16 years of my life.
What part of Guatemala?
Guatemala City.
Okay.
Guatemala City. My dad is actually from the west side of Guatemala City. So a little village called San Marcos, about 5 hours away from Guatemala City. And then my mom is from the east side of Guatemala City, about, hour and a half away from it. So my dad comes from a little village that's, a little bit more indigenous. It's colder temperature.
Like a pueblo?
Like a pueblo. And then my mom comes from like a more warmer country, and it's like cowboy status. People riding horses, guns everywhere. Yeah. Right. So it's very different. But they ended up meeting in Guatemala City, and that's where I grew up. And anyway, that's where I started.
How long were you there? Like till what age?
I was 15. And a half or whatever it was.
So you have a lot of memories of Guatemala.
A lot of memories. Still, a lot of my family, still down there.
Have you been able to go back and visit?
I have. Last time I went there was actually, it's been a while now, 2019, before my grandma passed away.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Good thing, because everyone kind of stopped traveling for a couple of years after that.
I know. I got kind of got lucky there. But,
yeah, that's cool. So in Guatemala, what did your family look like? Like, do you have any brothers and sisters and your parents? Yeah.
So, I have two younger brothers.
Okay.
I got my parents, and, I have a lot of cousins. My dad comes from a family of 7, and then my mom comes from a family of 19. So it's 20 with her.
19 children.
Yeah. I mean, it's 3 different moms,
but still, it's a big family.
It's a big family. So I have a lot of cousins, have a lot of family, and, So we would, as you can imagine, Hispanic culture is very tight in terms of family. So
yes,
I went to school with my cousins on my dad's side. So my dad's brothers' children, we carpool every day. So we would either pick them up and drive them to school, or my uncle will pick us up and then drive us to school. So we went to the same school. And
so what did your dad do for work down there? So, or your mom?
Yeah. My mom didn't work. She was a stay-at-home mom. And my dad graduated as a agricultural engineer.
Really?
That's coming from a small town. That's kind of what you do, right? Like you wanted to be do a lot of the crops and like think about corn and how do you grow, working farming.
Yeah.
Funny enough, he used that for about a year before he went and taught at the college, at the university down there. And then he worked with my uncle, and they started a company building homes, and ended up building churches for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
The LDS Church, yeah.
That's what they did.
Wow. So your dad was, you had some influence, right? While you were down there, you were kind of young, and he was a teacher, right? It sounds like, and then he started a business building, so that's kind of cool. Did you ever think about that? Like you would at some point want to start a business, or what's it like down there? Do very many people start businesses, or do they end up working for people?
Not very many people start businesses.
Yeah.
But I think that, to be frank, I don't think I ever thought of like, I should go start like kind of what my dad does for a living. My younger brother our middle brother, he is also a civil engineer, like my uncle is. But I think the lesson that I learned from my dad, and there's many, of course.
Sure.
But one of them was just the fact that like how to talk to people and how to just build conversations and build relationships. I can't remember a day in my life in Guatemala where there wasn't somebody visiting our home, eating at our home that was outside our family. Like there was always somebody at our house, always, and so
like for dinner or to
for
sleep
dinner or just
even?
to just not to sleep, for dinner or lunch or just come and say hi or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
I mean, there was just always people coming in and out. It was crazy. So like us talking to strangers and like having a conversation and my dad like teaching us how to do that, like it kind of, it's always been in my mind. When my dad moved to the city, he came from this small town. He had nothing. He was selling books on the bus, right?
Yeah.
Like that's how he was kind of making a living.
Right.
Then my uncle was able to get a scholarship to university. And they used that money to go buy beds.
Wow.
Because they didn't have any beds.
Wow.
And, but like those stories, like, right, they weren't building a business per se, but
right.
they were building their life.
Yeah.
And the fact that they were able to just say, you know what, we're going to do it. We're going to move to the city. We're going to go to the university and we're going to just get a better life for us.
Right.
And that
was the goal.
That was the goal.
Yeah.
And like that kind of spirit, I guess, is just kind of stuck with you.
Yeah.
You're like, well, if my dad took that risk, what am I doing? You know what I mean? Like how am I, what kind of risks am I taking in my life that should kind of get that kind of reward? And, so it's been phenomenal to see what he has accomplished.
So that's incredible. And like, I mean, the example that our parents are to us, right? Like I can think through these like crazy, crazy things. Like, in my particular situation, my dad didn't grow up wanting to be an entrepreneur really, even though he had it in him. I don't think he like aspired to that, but my mom pushed him to do that and kind of encouraged him to do that because he had the skills to do it, And so he started a business, and then 3 months later, my mom died. Wow. And my dad was kind of stuck just figuring it out, right? Yeah. And he had to, so he did. It's amazing to see like, what our parents can do for us, as far as examples and other people around us, So then another challenging thing must have happened for you, right? So your dad goes and builds this future for your family, taking care of you guys. And then you guys decide to move. Yeah. I mean, that must have been daunting.
Talk about like
across the world,
the risks that your parents take for you, right?
Yeah.
Like they were just like, so my parents applied for, the citizenship, before I was born. Mm-hmm. They got it when I was 15 and a half years old. Right. And, my dad comes home and says, hey, the U.S. Embassy called and said, we got approved. And my mom's like, great, we're moving,
Let's go.
Let's go. And so we moved here right after the Winter Olympics.
In the winter?
In the winter,
Stop
yeah.
it.
So
That's crazy.
It was February, whatever. I can't remember the exact date, but yeah.
So you probably never experienced snow.
Well, no, never experienced.
So what did you think when you got here?
Actually, we had visited the United States before. So,
you had visited.
Yeah, so I knew snow per se.
A little bit,
yeah. But when you're just a kid, you're just so resilient, and you adapt to so many things so quickly that, especially coming from like a country like Guatemala to the United States, right? Like this is what you've seen in movies,
right?
Like this is like literally the American dream, So I was like, man, we're going to Disneyland.
Every day.
And little did I know, Disneyland's far away from Utah. You know what I mean? Like people here, when they're like teenagers, like they're working. Like it's completely different from
what you thought.
like a Guatemalan looking at the movies would assume. But yeah, so they moved here. My mom knew a lot more English than my dad did. And so they come here and they just put their head down and started working, right? Like my mom was cleaning houses. My dad was driving for Cavanaugh's Chocolates, so delivering chocolates, and then working for Delta Airlines at night. So and again, like,
So he was running 2 jobs basically.
yeah,
And your mom was working.
Yeah.
Wow.
Just, my mom had to go from like being a stay-at-home mom to like actually working. And then my dad left this like, nice cushy job, right? Where he was a chief and like put his head down and just did whatever. So yeah, just another example of like craziness that they do for you as a kid.
Right. So why do you think they did that? Right. Like, was it ambition overall for your parents, or was it like, I'm creating a better future for our family? Were they thinking about the children? Like, what do you think really drew them to come here?
I think like at the end of the day, I think my parents felt like there was just a bigger opportunity here.
Yeah.
And I mean, you have lived outside of the United States.
Yes,
definitely. You know how it is. You know the
Yes.
difference. And it's just, in my opinion, there's just not another country like this country.
Yeah.
Where, you put your head down and go to work, and like opportunity just appears, it just opens up the doors for you to do what you need to do. And my parents, I think, were willing to take that sacrifice for our benefit as my brothers and myself, right? And for our future.
Yeah.
But even today, you fast forward till now, and all that sacrifice they did, to now where my dad is retired.
Yeah.
And like, even now, I think they're even in a better place than if we would have stayed in Guatemala.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just because like the opportunities that happen in this country, as you just put your head down and go to work, it's incredible.
Yeah.
It's just incredible.
And it's funny too, like, just this idea of, sometimes I was actually thinking about this earlier this week, like sometimes we get caught up in so many, like, I don't know if I could call them like unimportant things, but things that are like, maybe make us anxious or afraid, or like things that we worry about. And a lot of times they're just not that important, like if we just kind of settle in and get to work, a lot of good things happen. Like as we stay occupied, as we like start working towards something, I mean, it could have been so easy for your parents to be like, well, what if this doesn't work out? Or what if we go here and can't find a job? What if this doesn't work? Instead, they just kind of like, we'll figure it out along the way, like there's no, like that is like the entire sense of what an entrepreneur is. Whether you work for somebody or not, you like took, your parents took their own future into their hands.
Sometimes it's better not to know, right? Sometimes just being naive kind of helps.
It's so much better.
And you're just gonna, like there is no other way.
Yeah.
And we're just gonna make it work.
Yeah.
If you kind of start looking at it and say, oh man, like % of entrepreneurs make it. Like why would you start something?
Right.
Right. Like it's just like the odds are completely against you.
Yeah.
But if you just forget about that and just like, no, I'm gonna go do it. Like it's just it's just a different mentality.
Yeah, it's really funny you say that. I was pitching an investor a couple of weeks ago, and they asked me about like when I would sell distro. Yeah. And I gave them, I think, the right and logical answer, which is when the right opportunity comes, right? Like, none of us have a crystal ball. It could be here, it could be here, And he goes, you gave me the right answer, but the answer I was hoping for was that you'd shoot to be a unicorn, you'd be this multi-billion-dollar business. And he's like, you were right, and I said, I think that's the problem with that. I've done this before, that this isn't my first time. Yeah. And sometimes it's better to be naive. Sometimes it's better to just, when you don't know what you don't know, then you shoot for the moon, Yeah. So I totally agree. Yeah. So what happens then? You come here, you go to high school, and what's the next step for you?
Yeah, so I come here, go to high school. Funny enough, I ended up playing hockey because the family that
hockey.
Yeah, I know.
Really?
I Guatemala playing hockey.
Yeah.
The family that we lived with, their kids played hockey, so they're like, you should come over, and never ice skated. We were learning how to ice skate, and
we're like, we'll come to Utah and then play a Canadian sport.
Exactly. Exactly. That's it. But it was so fun. Fun. So after that, I go on a mission as part of the my church, and go to Samoa for 2 years.
Wow.
And that's an incredible experience for me. and then I come back and go to school at the University of Utah. So I graduate with a chemistry degree. And in that,
why did you study chemistry?
so I had some credits from high school.
Okay.
So I took the AP chemistry class, whatever.
Okay, stop there. Why were you so interested in chemistry in high school?
It goes back to the entrepreneur, I guess, kind of dream where, I always saw chemistry as a way to create things, right? To innovate. You put two chemicals together and something happens, right? And it was tangible, right? Mm-hmm. Like it's just, so I really like that about it.
Yeah.
And little did I know that chemistry is used in a lot of things, right? The sweater that I'm using right now.
My iPhone.
This black dyed, it didn't happen magically.
Yeah, totally.
So that's kind of how it was. And to be the other part of it too was that, I'm guessing 99% of kids in America, I wanted to be a doctor. Right. I'm going to be a doctor.
Yeah.
I'm going to make, money and do whatever.
Why a doctor? What did you see in a doctor that you thought, or idolized, I guess?
There was a little bit of that prestige, you're a doctor, right? Versus you're just whatever else people, have out there titles. And then the fact that you were able to provide for a family, mm-hmm. Right. In a very nice way. It seems very intriguing to me.
Yeah.
I went and shadowed a doctor and I realized I pass out when I see blood. I'm not gonna cut anybody if they were dying. You know what I mean? This is not for me.
While you're in college,
while I'm in college, I'm just what am I doing? That's not who I'm going. That's not me. I'm not. I'm just not that person. But the nice thing about chemistry, right, is it just opens doors to do a lot of things. I was lucky enough to get an offer to go work what was then Watson Pharmaceuticals.
Okay.
It turned out to Watson.
Is that here in Utah?
That's here in Utah. Yeah, it's actually Dinesh Patel, if you know that name. He started that, and they were doing patches.
Interesting.
It was the testosterone patches, fentanyl patches. So
skin patches
for pain, for all the sorts of other things. That was their technology that they came up with.
Right.
Anyway, worked for them doing research, reverse engineering of brand products, and really enjoyed kind of my time there. It was a lot of fun. But I goes back to what I started with my dad and having people at my house and talking to other folks. And I realized that doing research is kind of a lonely job, right? It's just you and the chemicals, and there's not that much, of talking to folks. And
right.
And I was like, is this how my life ends, right? Do I do this for 50 years and then just, retire and that's it? And I didn't think that was for me.
Were you, even though you're having these feelings, did you feel like you were good at it, or did it feel like something that you kind of had to force to be good at it?
Yeah.
Did it come naturally to you?
It came naturally to me. I mean, it was...
Because it's pretty technical.
Yeah, like any job, right? At the beginning, you go to school and whatever, and you think you know everything, but you show up to your job and you're deer in the headlights. Hold on, they didn't mention this in college,
Yeah.
So you have to learn some sort of process. You have to learn some, what exactly your role is.
Yeah.
But I think after I got a hold of that, it was pretty it came easy, right? I was able to accomplish my job and got promoted, move up and whatever. But at the end of the day, I'm where do I go from here, right? There's Watson Pharmaceuticals, and there was back then it was called BioFire, just up the street from us. But there isn't a pharmaceutical place in Utah, right?
Industry.
Yeah, you got to move to New Jersey, right? If that's what you want to do for a living, type of thing. So I just kind of seeing maybe the writing on the wall.
Did you? So we've talked a little bit about about your family before the show. At what point did you get married?
So I started that job in the pharmaceutical department, and then I got married about 2 years after I started, a year and a half after I started that job.
So she signed up to be married to a chemist.
Yeah. Yeah. Luckily for me, she didn't know what she was getting herself into, you know? Yeah. So
very cool.
Yeah, that was back in 2013. So.
And where is she from?
She's from Holiday, Utah.
Really?
Yeah.
Awesome.
So right here.
Yeah. So you weren't about to move her away from Utah.
No, she her parents live here, right? Lived here. They moved to Idaho, but her parents, brothers, sisters live here. So she grew up here. Yeah.
So you're at this job, you get married at some point in the job, and you're starting to feel like this doesn't seem like me. It doesn't seem like a fit for me forever. Yeah, like it's just like, what am I going to do, right? What am I going to do? And I started thinking about like, okay, well, I saw, try to read a couple of things on like how career progression and whatever. And I think, was the money decent at least? The money was decent. I mean, it's, when it's just you and your wife, like, you don't need much to make it last, right? Once you have kids, you're like, okay, well, now it's expensive. It's a different style. And I think, I can't remember exactly this story, but I think it was, President Eyring actually that shared a story like he's doing homework or something like that with his dad, and his dad asked him like, what are you thinking when you're not doing this? And he said something like, I'm not thinking about this problem, and his dad goes something like, well, maybe you should change careers, right? Like or to think about doing something else. Yeah. And it was this idea that if you're not thinking about it all the time, it might not be something you want to do. And I think I put that together with this notion that like if you do something you like as a living, right, you never work a day in your life. Yeah, exactly. And I was like, I don't really believe that. And then I realized that like one of the things I really like to do is like I like to look at the stock market. I like to look at stocks going up and down. I like to put money in and invest and blah blah blah. And I'm like, well, why? Maybe I should just get paid to do that, And so I went back to business school at the University of Utah. So you went back to school. I went back to school. So how long were you a chemist at the company? About 5 years. Well, you were there for a while. Yeah. I was. So did you seem like did that feel like to you? I mean, was there any thought of like scarcity? Like, what if this doesn't work? I have a job here. I'm making money. Oh, well. You probably already started to have kids, right? So this is the crazy. And I remember one of my friends actually. You're kind of crazy. One of my friends talking to me about this so my wife's pregnant. Okay. That's serious. That's serious. I'm at this job, right? Secure. I'm not getting like this. Yeah, there's no risk. I can do that for the rest of my life and be fine. Yeah. And I'm about to quit my job. Yeah. Right. No health insurance. Yeah. Right? I got a mortgage to pay. Yeah. My wife's pregnant, and like, what am I gonna do? And my friend's like, what are you doing? Yeah. And I think it goes back to like my dad. Yeah. And just like, like it's okay. Yeah. It's gonna work out. Yeah. And I think you learn a lot when you put your back against a wall. Yeah. And realize like, how am I going to make it work? Yeah. And, but I think it also pushed me to like do a lot more during my MBA, right? Like if we would have been cushy, like, and I would have, I don't know, stayed working, blah, blah, blah. Like, I don't know if I would have gotten as much as I did by just saying, I'm going to quit and I'm just going to go do it. You know what I mean? I'm going to get the most out of it that I can and go do it. And, so I took that risk and I just plunged right in and said, okay, I want to do either investing or I want to do consulting management. And I kind of did, internships around that. Wow. And then realized that I really liked the investing side a lot more. You were learning so much every day about different industries, right? Right. And it's just, I love that like intellectual curiosity and the fact that it was just new every single time. Because I'm like, I had no idea what cybersecurity is and I got to come up to speed with it, And every business within each industry is very different. Very different. Right? Very different. So I love that. So anyway, after school, I ended up joining a small buyout fund called SBCC, Small Business Community Capital, which at the time was based out of Stamford, Connecticut. But I was located here because they had an LP here and they were doing deals here. So they were willing to hire you remotely. Yeah. Before it was cool. Before it was cool. And then
wanted me to move back.
Where did they, before we get into that, like what was their investment thesis? Like what did they invest in? Is it, small business doesn't make me think typically of startups and that sort of thing, but
so this was like, they were taking, majority acquisition of the company. Their whole thesis was, it was actually, it's a couple from Colombia.
Really?
Actually, and their whole thesis was that they would acquire a company, and then they had relationships with suppliers and distributors that would enhance that company's capabilities in terms of logistics or distributions.
So it's kind of like a private equity.
It was private equity play. Yeah, absolutely. Cool. And so really enjoyed working with them and for them.
How did that feel though? So you go from, being a chemist back to school and then looking for opportunities in finance, and, as an investor, like, how did you feel doing that versus going and working as a chemist every day? Yeah,
it's a good question. So like when you're doing research, that's what I was doing at Allergen. It's hard to put timelines around research, right? Like,
right, that's true.
There's no like, okay, Ben, you got a week to solve cancer.
It's not gonna happen.
It's not how it works.
Yeah.
It's just kind of like, are you making progress? Like that was really like the metric in a sense, or whether it be good progress or bad progress. Right? Like if you did something that didn't work, it's still progress because you found out this is one way that it doesn't work. So fast forward to like the investment side, and there's deadlines, right? There's deals to be had, and so it just felt a lot more energizing at some point, where what the pharmaceutical job taught me was just you have to have a lot of patience, and there's a lot more thinking on like, okay, what I can go do this experiment, but is that worthwhile? Like, let's walk through it into like why is it really that the path or whatever.
Right.
On the investment side, it was just the velocity was just higher and
faster and more intense.
Yeah, and I don't know. There's something about that like I love like the chase. My wife always talks to me about like once I marry her and I like I got her like
then what do we do?
What do we do? Yeah. And that I always love that chase and because she played hard to get, that I really like was attracted to her after all. So I love that kind of chase. Like that's really like, something I don't know why, but I enjoy it. That was the main difference. The other thing too is like, there's always like a process, right? Like, even if you're doing research and you have to kind of follow a process. And I think on the investment side, there is a process, a framework to like understand a company.
Well, because if you don't apply a framework, wouldn't you get different results?
Yeah, exactly.
How do you measure them against each other?
It's just be like, apples to oranges, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So you want to have it the same. And I think that applied across both, but it was very distinct roles. It was completely different. I had to learn a new, muscle, by all intents and purposes. But anyway, fast forward and those guys wanted me to move back to Connecticut. I had my first son.
And how long were you there?
I was there for, so I was doing that while I was interning with them. So it's about 1.5 years together.
Okay.
So I had my first son. I had a mortgage in Utah. My wife was from Utah. My in-laws were in Utah at the time. And, we weren't really going anywhere. Right? We just realized that, we really enjoyed Utah.
What did your in-laws think? Were your in-laws supportive of what you were doing? And
they were really supportive. Yeah. They're really good and supportive about what we do. I think my parents were probably less supportive.
You took too much risk. They're like, we took risk. Yeah, exactly. Don't do what we did.
Exactly. They they kind of enjoy like come over for Sunday dinners. They live like literally like 10 minutes away from my house.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So they like the visits, right?
That's cool.
They like the visits.
Do you get to visit them?
I get to visit them a lot.
That's awesome. Does your mom still cook Guatemalan food?
She does.
That's awesome.
Yeah, she does. Yeah.
They do a lot of plantains in Guatemala.
They do. I mean, like
maduros or the sweet plantains.
The sweet plantains. Yeah. Black beans and sweet plantains, man. That's like,
And what about the rice? Is it white rice?
White rice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I lived in Colombia for a couple of years. So we talked about that. And they used to make, I miss the food like crazy. My wife has come back with me to Colombia and she says, the food's kind of boring. And I'm like, I think it's so good, you know?
No.
And anyway, they make this, they call it arroz de coco. And it's like this coconut. They make rice with like coconut water.
Okay.
And it's really good.
Wow.
So I don't know if they have anything like that there, but
they don't. They have arroz con leche, which is
that's good too.
You know, rice with milk, but it's more of like a sweet type of thing.
Right. Like a dessert, huh?
Yeah.
So does your mom cook Guatemalan food still?
She does.
That's awesome.
Yeah. She cooks all sorts of food.
That's so awesome.
Yeah.
Sorry, I love one of my favorite things about traveling is food.
You and me both. Yeah.
So okay, so you're working at this group, and they say, hey, we want you to move.
Yeah, and
which is good, right? They like you.
Yeah.
They want you to stay.
It just wasn't a fit for me.
Why?
Because again,
was it just the logistics?
All of our family was here, yeah, and we had just this is our first kid, right? Like, it was nice to have grandparents nearby, and like we had a house, and like it was like it felt like we were settling here, and like just to pick up and move, and just like I don't know if that's gonna be a good fit.
Yeah.
Anyway.
But outside of the logistics, did it still seem like something you liked?
It seemed like something. Yeah, something.
Like if it was in Utah, still you would have stayed.
That'd be something that I would like to do.
Yeah.
But I guess like because I always have had a history of being more fluid, right? Like I moved here. I feel like I'm okay with change.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like
your whole life.
My whole life has always there's always been change. There's always been, do this, do that, move here, move there. So I'm completely okay with it. I'm completely fine going into ambiguity and, figuring things out. So when that didn't happen, I decided to do my own thing and started, in fact, with a neighbor of mine, started a business called Outbid. We were trying to replace the car salesman by, having you go online and be able to put in this is only for new cars, but be able to put in, the trim that you wanted, the type of car that you wanted, and then have the dealerships bid for your business.
That's interesting. That's a different take, because that's saying in most cases it's the buyer going to the website and saying what's available.
Yep.
But you're saying here's what I'm looking for as a user. And the businesses or the dealerships are saying, here's what we're willing to sell it to you for.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
And the reason why, dealerships are willing to bid below the other dealership is because they get a rebate from the manufacturer on like the number of cars they sell every month. So if you can imagine if a dealership needs one more car to get that rebate, right? Like they're willing to sell it at a lower price. Plus, dealerships don't make money on the car sales.
So, okay.
They make money on the service.
So that's true. And parts, right?
Yeah.
Like the car sales is actually very low.
Yeah.
You're totally right.
Yeah.
I think they only make like $1,500 a car or something like that. It's not really much.
It's a tough business.
It is a tough business. I actually went golfing with the dealership owner for the Toyota dealership in actually more your area in Farmington.
Okay.
Yeah. I forget his name. And it was really interesting. He was telling me all about the business. We do a lot of volume in sales, but low margin, very low margin. He didn't recommend that I get in the business.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, so where did you experience the pain point? Like, where did you see this problem, and why cars? Why, after going, from chemistry to finance, then why this car idea?
So when my first son was born, before he was born, we were looking for a car, right? My wife and I would just drive, this kind of beater cars. We had a Nissan Maxima that had 320 miles, 300,000 miles on it. Right? It was like a surprise. It would just run by a miracle, right? That's kind of those things. So when we had a kid, we probably want to get something a little more safe or whatever.
Yeah.
So we would go to these dealerships and talk to them about us potentially buying a car. And, they were out doing their job, and he's like, "Oh, Ben, yeah, we'd love to help you. What's your phone number? What's this? What's that?" And he was like this like experience where you're like, holy cow, this person's calling me like 24/7, right? Like I have no idea if I want to buy that car. I was just
many
looking.
dealerships are calling you,
and all of a sudden you become part of like this,
lead list.
Yeah. Forget it. Like even taking like those, robocalls would be even better.
Yeah.
And I'm like, there's gotta be a better way to do this. Right. And then my father-in-law owns his own, used car dealership.
Oh, there you go.
So I was talking to him, and with him and the experience that I have had, the state of Utah actually used to publish like where cars were sold. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you can still do that, but look at it anymore. But you were able to see like Toyota Bountiful, right?
Yeah,
sold X amount of cars.
I didn't know that.
Out of
That's
all
cool.
of the cars that were sold in the state. So you start thinking about how do you go about buying a car? Well, you go to probably the nearest dealership that's to your house, right?
Yeah.
Why am I driving 2 hours to go?
Yeah.
And we're like, well, why do we can allow that dealership that's in Morgan, Utah, right? Where it's a little bit farther away from people to compete with the dealership that's just down the street from you by saying, hey, they're in the bid, they're bidding for your business, right? And I think as consumers, I'm willing to drive for an hour if I'm saving $1,000, $2,000, or whatever it may be.
Right.
So we kind of leveling the playing field. Was another plan of it. So, like every good entrepreneur, right? Like the idea in my mind was like, this is the perfect idea. There's no reason why this shouldn't work.
No problems.
yeah, exactly. And we go out and sell it and realize that it's just a tougher sell than what we think.
So before you get into that, did you quit your job already and then go do this? Did you stash some money away to be able to do this? Like, how did you get started?
Yeah. So this was, while I was working for SBCC, mm-hmm. and they realizing like I wasn't going to move, they were like, okay, go find something else. You can still do.
There was a time stamp.
There was still do something here between us and whatever. So during that period, I was, hopefully ramping that up. And my co-founder was a technical guy, so he was coding all of that stuff and getting the APIs to work. And
so you started coding this product, and then your co-founder was doing it moonlighting, right? So you didn't need to raise any money yet.
No, yeah, we didn't.
Just you guys.
We just thought like, hey, we can get some product. Let's go out and sell it. And like frankly, like, raising money didn't actually even come to my mind. Like it wasn't an idea. It was just like, let's just go and sell this thing and see.
My first startup is the same. I didn't even know.
Exactly. You don't, right? Like you're just like, you're, because again, to me, it was like this, why wouldn't this work? Yeah. You know what I mean? Like I had such a bad experience, like that this makes complete sense. And, so that's how it was. And we went and sold it. And, the salespeople were like, what do you mean you're going to replace us? Right, like that wasn't the right wording.
So you go and you pitch the sales leader at the dealership, and he's like, "No, this is terrible."
Yeah, exactly. Like what I mean. And I think we should have used the word like enhance, sales or some other word. And then they also were scared that it would be just sales to the bottom, right?
Yeah.
And it goes back to like understanding your customer, right? Well, how do those guys make money? Well, it's a commission based business, So when you're selling something at less price, it's just tougher. So all of those things weren't working on our, on our side.
Favor, yeah.
And unfortunately, I had to put food on the table. I mean, I had a kid and I had a wife and I got a mortgage, and we couldn't continue as much as we wanted to. And after 3 months of it, going out there and selling and just not getting as much traction as we thought we would be, running out of savings, right? Yeah. So it's like, well, I had to grow up and get a real job. And so I started applying for other things and, going back to like, oh, I really like the investment side.
Yeah.
So I applied to the opportunities here in town that were available, mm-hmm. and got an offer from Goldman to go join them. And at the same time, while I was in the whole background check transition, blah, blah, I got an offer from the state of Utah. Wow. In their public pension plan investment department, and decided to join them.
Mm-hmm. What year was that?
That was 2016. 2016.
Yeah, 2016, 2017.
Yeah, 2016.
That's awesome. And what was your role there?
So I joined the private equity team as they were building it out. And I was an investment analyst at the time when I joined. And, frankly, not knowing exactly what I was getting myself into, right? Like, well, this sounds like a cool opportunity, don't know. And it turned out to be like I mentioned, if you love what you do, you don't work a day in your life.
Yeah.
At URS, it felt that way.
Yeah.
It didn't feel like all of a sudden I'm like, okay, this is something that I'm thinking about it all the time.
Really?
Right? I'm going home. I'm like, it's still in my mind.
Were you investing funds into other funds like Mercato?
So the way the state of Utah works is, here in Utah, we have what we call a combined system, pension system, where you got teachers, you got police, you got firemen, public employees. They every month they take a portion of their paycheck and put it in a pension plan if they chose to be in a pension plan. And then that money, there's a cost of living every year. There's inflation every year. So that money needs to be invested for it to keep up with those inflations and cost of living. And it needs to be invested for them to be able to retire at some point.
Right.
So that the pension plan does that. It invests that money for them.
So you were essentially on the investment team deciding where to place that money.
Yeah. So we would, there's a lot of asset class, right? So it's a diversified, the pension plan, in my opinion, it's not a wealth creation, it's a wealth preservation.
Yeah, it's
vehicle,
preservation
right?
mode.
The goal here is to make sure that everybody that puts money in has a retirement at the end of the day.
Right.
So it was super diversified. I cover one of the asset classes where the money was invested.
Where were you in charge?
It was private equity.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay,
so
that
private
makes
equity
a ton of sense.
composed venture, all the way from seed to
so that was what I was going to ask then. Did that particular fund invest in any, let's call it startup or private equity funds?
Yeah, so that's all we did, right?
Wow.
24/7. It was looking at early stage funds, late stage funds, multi-stage funds, looking at buyouts, middle market, large caps, and lower middle market, looking at some distressed funds that were buying and purchasing assets that were, out of favor, and turning them around. So looking at all sorts of things in all sorts of different industries. It was just
more of what you liked.
An unbelievable story. And I think more than that too, because I was one of the first ones to join, it was a very entrepreneurial role where, there were processes and things around it, but you had to go and kind of build it yourself. And it was a lot of fun.
Do you feel like the state and or government nature of the group or the fund, did that feel like it slowed you down at times, or did you feel like you really had sufficient autonomy to get it done? How was that?
One of the things, you kind of always need fences and lanes, right? Because as good as anybody is, right? You're always going to make mistakes. So that you always kind of need fences and lanes to keep you protecting you from going off the cliff.
Yeah.
So that's probably in any role.
Yeah.
And that was a year, as no doubt. But I always told this story, the second week I was on the job, I'm on a plane with the deputy CIO, and they put you in front of managers that you see on CNBC, right?
Right. And you're deciding.
And I'm two weeks into this thing, and I'm like, man, they have a lot of trust in me, right? It makes you really think, okay, I gotta really perform, because if they're putting this much trust in me, how much more should I, it really is quite in terms of autonomy, there's fences and there's lanes, and they're not gonna make you run off the cliff,
right?
But they really expect you to be the face of the pension.
Are you allowed to say how much was under management?
I think you can go and it's public information.
It probably is,
so
right?
The pension plan has every year they put a report out there. So
It had to have been in the billions.
It's in the billions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's a large pension plan.
Yeah. It might be the largest in Utah. Nobody talks about.
Well, there's only one in Utah, right?
So
that's the benefit of Utah, is that it's like, because it's a combined system.
Yeah.
You get to scale. Like all the places like Texas and California, like
they do it separately.
They all do it separately. Like in California, they're so large that like there's specific counties that have their own pension plan, right? Because they're just so big. In Texas, I mean, Texas Teachers, which is a well-known LP, like it's humongous, like bigger than the whole state of Utah.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like this is the Teachers of Texas.
Yeah,
so
that's crazy.
Yeah.
So okay, so you do that for a couple more years, right?
Yep.
And then how do you land at Mercato, which you're at today?
So
and for those that aren't familiar, I think a lot of our listeners would know, but Mercato is a very prestigious growth equity fund in Utah. And placed incredible deals like Stance. They were in Domo. They were in, a lot of logos here in Utah.
Yeah.
Stance is in California, but yeah.
Yeah. We have Galileo here. It's called Candy back in the day.
That's right.
And so the way it worked out was, URS was very mission driven, as you can imagine.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing more satisfying knowing that, like, a teacher, some policeman here in the state of Utah is invested in like top technology, right? Like whatever technology you use right now, it probably was provided and funded by the public employees of the United States.
Yes.
Which is crazy to think, right? Like the public employees of the United States have funded a lot of what we have today. And like, it's a beautiful, like, what a beautiful mission.
Yeah.
That's lovely. I do feel like I was a little bit, away from the trenches, right? Like going back to what I said of like taking risk and being able to, like, out there blocking and tackling, right? Like
before you're as an investor, you're making like slow, methodical, careful decisions, right?
At the pension plan, you're like the top of the food.
Yeah.
Zach. I'm telling people what to do. Nobody, you're the keys to the kingdom in a sense. I feel like you ask about the difference between my pharmaceutical job and the investment side. That kind of velocity, right? Like the chase.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted a little bit more of that. I'm young enough that felt like there was still gas on the tank. To go do something else, and I was lucky enough to get a call from the Mercato guys. I've known them as we spoke. The industry here in town is pretty small.
Yeah.
And was lucky enough to get an opportunity to go back to those trenches and this time partnering up with the entrepreneurs that are out there building. What would be the next Uber, the next Zoom, the next, distro, whatever it may be, right? Like, I mean, if you ever want to get excited about life, talk to an entrepreneur that I see myself, right? Like when I was building my startup, it's like, this is going to be the next best thing. You know what I mean? Like I was so excited, like, how do you not believe in this? Like the model is clear. And if you want to get excited about the future of the United States, I mean, that's it. It's those folks that are out there, quitting their jobs and saying, I'm going to go do my own thing.
The American dream.
Exactly. And I just, it goes back to like where I started, right? Like that's why my parents moved here, and that's what I, kind of been doing my whole life. And I just wanted to go help them out, partner up with them and say, your fight is my fight. Let's go do this. You know what I mean?
That's awesome. So what's your role at Mercato today?
So I'm
on the investment team?
I'm on the investment team. I'm a senior associate. I work very closely with Zane Bastide in the
Zane.
Yeah,
I love Zane.
Yeah, he's a good guy.
So I know quite a few people at Mercato, and Zane is one I've stayed in touch with for a long time.
Yeah.
He's a really good guy.
Really good guy. So we together covered the Mountain West and the Mid Atlantic for the firm.
Awesome.
So that's what I'm doing. So
in fact, it was really interesting. I don't know. I think this is okay, but I went to. I don't think Zane revealed anything bad, but after the Silicon Slopes Summit, me, Zane, and two other fund team members, other investors at some other venture funds, They were both venture. Zane was in, growth. And they're like, let's go grab some pizza. And it was late. It was already like 9:30 or something. I was like, all right, sounds good. So we went and had pizza, and everyone like just kind of like relaxed a little bit. And it wasn't so much like, oh, we got to be on because we're investors, like vetting everyone out. And everyone just relaxed. And it was cool because we got to ask these guys like just different perspectives about like how the fund works, how investment works, and just from their perspective, right? Yeah. And it was really cool to hear, again, their take on like each fund and like how it works. And it's really cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was really cool. And Zane was there. So that was fun. That was just, I don't know, a month ago or so.
Yep.
So what's next for you?
I mean, it's finding that, the entrepreneur and partnering up with him or her and really, going out and doing something special. That's what I'm focused on today. And that's probably what, kind of drives me, wakes me up in the morning. I now, now got 3 kids.
Awesome. So how old are they?
6, 4, and 2.
You're busy.
Busy. And I got one more. My wife's expecting one more. So
congratulations.
That's the probably the other part of my life that's like, top priority for me.
Yeah.
And outside of that, that's kind of it. And it's just not that much. I'm a pretty simple person.
Yeah.
But that's it's just exciting.
Well, those sound like big, exciting things. I know they're just not very simple, but it's pretty cool to hear your story. And, it's just like entrepreneur, being an entrepreneur has so many different avenues and things that like different paths that you can take.
Yeah.
There's the very, very stereotypical traditional one, but like I actually do think of investors, right? Because maybe a lot of people don't understand, or some do, that when you create a fund, everyone participates in that fund together. Yeah. And so, working on a team and participating in that fund, you get rewarded. It's a merit system, right?
Yep.
Like you get rewarded based on how well you all did together. And so I think inherently that's very, favorable for people with an entrepreneur mindset. So really cool.
Yeah. No, completely agree.
Yeah. Well, thanks for coming on the show today. It was super awesome to hear your story. And where can people contact you if they have any questions for you?
Yeah, you can connect with me on LinkedIn.
Awesome.
Follow me on Twitter for bad takes, or just send me an email. It's pretty simple. blopez@mercatopartners.com, and we'd love to connect with everybody. Part of my job is just building relationships, and it's one thing I love to do. So
that's great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of No Instructions. Feel free to leave us a rating or review wherever you listen to podcasts and subscribe so we can continue producing these podcasts. Today's episode was brought to you by Distro. Distro is a platform to help startups find, hire, and pay employees in over 200 countries. It's free to use. Go to distro.io to set up your free account today.